This is Land of Havilah, Jeremiah 39. The long prophesied day of disaster is here. Verse 1. In the 9th year of Zedekiah king of Judah, in the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon and all his army came against Jerusalem and besieged it. In the 11th year of Zedekiah, in the 4th month, the 9th day of the month, a breach was made in the city. All the princes of the king of Babylon came in and sat in the middle gate, Nergal-Sharezer, Samgar-Nebo, Sarsekim, Rabsaris, Nergal-Sharezer, Rabmag, with all the rest of the princes of the king of Babylon. Comment: the fall of Jerusalem is recorded in the Bible in 1 Kings 25, 2 Chronicles 36, Jeremiah 52, and here in Jeremiah 39. We'll add information from all those places. In verse 1 here, the Babylonians set siege to Jerusalem. 19 years previously, Nebuchadnezzar came to Judah and conquered it the first time, but after 3 years, Judah rebelled, so Nebuchadnezzar had to take the city again. Now Judah has rebelled again. This is Nebuchadnezzar's third very costly military campaign here, and he'll make sure it's his last. He'll completely devastate Judah to make sure he never has to come back. In verse 1, the siege began in the fall season, and in verse 2, Nebuchadnezzar's army breached the wall approximately a year and a half later. The exact date of the breach is in verse 2. On the Gregorian calendar, it was approximately June the 19th, either 586 or 587 BC. By the time of the breach, the famine was severe and there was no bread in the city, 2 Kings 25:3. In verse 3, all the Babylonian princes, meaning all the most powerful men of the army, sat in the middle gate, which means now they have complete control of the city. But backing up a little bit to tell what the king did when they saw the Babylonians coming through the wall, verse 4. When Zedekiah, king of Judah, and all the men of war saw them, then they fled and went out of the city by night, by way of the king's garden, through the gate between the two walls, and he went out toward the Arabah. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued them and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho. Comment in verse 4, Zedekiah never surrendered himself as Jeremiah advised. He stayed in the city until he brought the worst-case scenario on himself. The Babylonians entered the city swinging the sword, taking no pity on anyone, male or female, young or old, 2 Chronicles 36:18. In verse 4, when Zedekiah and his military saw that the Babylonians had breached the city, or when they knew they were about to breach it, they slipped out by night by way of the king's garden through the gate between the two walls. This means the king had a private gate for exiting the city that he could access from his garden. The gate was behind a wall so that it was invisible from the inside, and apparently it was disguised from the outside as well, or some of the Babylonian troops would have been posted there. The king and his men fled toward the Arabah in verse 4, which is the flat desert valley of the Jordan River. But in verse 5, the Babylonians overtook them in the plain near Jericho, about 15 miles from Jerusalem. Zedekiah's army scattered away from him, 2 Kings 25:5. The Babylonians captured him, as Yahweh said he would be captured. And still in verse 5, when they had taken him, they brought him up to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, to Riblah in the land of Hamath, and he pronounced judgment on him. Comment in verse 5, the Babylonians took Zedekiah to Riblah of Hamath, which is modern Rablah, Syria, about 200 miles north of Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar was there and pronounced judgment on him. The sentence was as follows, verse 6. Then the king of Babylon killed Zedekiah's sons in Riblah before his eyes. The king of Babylon also killed all the nobles of Judah. Moreover, he put out Zedekiah's eyes and bound him in fetters to carry him to Babylon. Comment in verse 6, Nebuchadnezzar made Zedekiah watch while he killed his sons. Then he put out his eyes and had him taken, bound in fetters, to Babylon. By prophecy, Zedekiah would die a natural death there, Jeremiah 34:4 and 5. So he lived to think about how right Jeremiah was about everything. In 2 Kings 25:8, Nebuchadnezzar sent a high-ranking officer named Nebuzaradan to Judah to destroy the land, deport the survivors, and set up a new governor. Nebuzaradan arrived in Jerusalem on the 5th month, 7th day, which was a month after the breach, under Nebuzaradan's supervision, verse 8. The Chaldeans burned the king's house and the houses of the people with fire, and broke down the walls of Jerusalem. Then Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away captive into Babylon the residue of the people who remained in the city, the deserters also who fell away to him, and the residue of the people who remained. But Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, left of the poor of the people who had nothing in the land of Judah, and gave them vineyards and fields at the same time. Comment: in 2 Kings 25, 2 Chronicles 36, and verses 8 to 10 we just read, Nebuzaradan burned and razed the city, including the temple, all the buildings, and the city wall all around. There was complete and utter physical destruction such that the city was unlivable afterwards. According to Jeremiah's prophecies, they buried dead bodies in the valley of Hinnom on the south side of the city until there was no place left to bury, and they left other dead bodies exposed, Jeremiah 7:32 and 33. No doubt the Babylonians put the survivors to work doing the digging and hauling the bodies. Nebuzaradan carried away what was left of the Judean population, but in verse 10 he did leave a few of the poorest who had nothing and gave them vineyards and fields. We don't preach too much at Land of Havilah, but we must take note that this disaster was because of false religion. The false prophets had the big majority of the population convinced that Yahweh would save them just like he always had, going back 20 generations of the house of David. They were almost all deceived, the king, all the king's men, the general population, and the priests. Yes, the priests. Contrast that to how a sane person with no religion at all would have handled it. He would have surrendered long before it came to this. Zedekiah believed in Yahweh, but not the Yahweh of the Scripture. His problem, and all Judah's problem, was that they didn't read the Scripture and had no respect for it. If they had read and respected the Scripture, they would have known Yahweh in his true identity, and not only would they have avoided this disaster, but they would also have been tremendously powerful. They would be the head of the nations and not the tail, Deuteronomy 28:13. Even today, it's as crucial as ever to avoid false religion by examining the Scripture for ourselves, because we might not get it at all right from our culture or from our religion. Now, as for Jeremiah, here's how Yahweh rescued him from the fall of Jerusalem. Verse 11. Now Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, commanded Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, concerning Jeremiah, saying, Take him and take care of him. Do him no harm, but do to him even as he tells you. So Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, sent with Nebushazban, Rabsaris, and Nergal-Sharezer, Rabmag, and all the chief officers of the king of Babylon. They sent and took Jeremiah out of the court of the guard and committed him to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, that he should carry him home. So he lived among the people. Comment verses 11 to 14 explain what happened to Jeremiah when Jerusalem fell. There's more information in verses 1 to 6 of the next chapter. When the Babylonians broke in, they captured Jeremiah in the court of the guard. They lumped him in with all the rest of the captives and marched them in chains 200 miles north to Riblah. Nebuchadnezzar took note of Jeremiah at Riblah. He issued an order to all his top officers to take Jeremiah in, take care of him, do him no harm, and best of all, do to him whatever he says. They took the chains off his hands, and knowing Judah was destroyed, they offered to take him to Babylon and take care of him there. It would have been an easy ticket for the rest of his life. And they added, if you don't want to go with us to Babylon, behold, all the land is before you. Go wherever you want. Jeremiah stayed at Riblah a while. No doubt he got his strength up with food and rest. Then when the Babylonians told him they had appointed a new Jewish governor to rule from Mizpah of Benjamin, he chose to return to the land. As he was leaving, the Babylonian officers gave him food and a present. The present was probably some type of award recognizing his value to the kingdom. In verse 14, Jeremiah was back in the land, living among the people. The Babylonians had charged the Jewish governor to see to his welfare. Now backing up to before the city fell, while Jeremiah was still confined to the court of the guard, verse 15. Now Yahweh's word came to Jeremiah while he was shut up in the court of the guard, saying, Go and speak to Ebed-melech the Ethiopian, saying, Yahweh of armies, the God of Israel, says, Behold, I'll bring my words on this city for evil and not for good, and they'll be accomplished before you in that day. But I'll deliver you in that day, says Yahweh, and you'll not be given into the hand of the men of whom you're afraid. For I'll surely save you, and you won't fall by the sword, but you'll escape with your life because you've put your trust in me, says Yahweh. Comment in verses 15 to 18, Ebed-Melech is the Ethiopian eunuch who put himself out there for Jeremiah in the last chapter. He risked angering the king and the most powerful men of the kingdom to save Jeremiah from the pit. In verse 15, Yahweh spoke to Jeremiah about him. He said, "Go and tell Ebed-Melech, I'll bring evil on this city, but I'll deliver you. You'll not fall into the hands of the men you fear. You won't fall by the sword. You'll escape with your life because you put your trust in me." So we have a stark contrast in this chapter of those who put their trust in Yahweh and the vast majority of those who didn't. Jeremiah 40 is next.